What is your... Are we doing the bad point now? Going to bad point now, Flom? What is your bad point?
All right, bad point it is. Let me double check.
I don't actually understand what you meant by this, Angle, so I'm interested to see how you're going to explain it. Go on.
Well, my bad point is just that, sorry, I got to make sure I understand this. So this is a bad point as in like, it's like not a good take, or it's not good what we saw?
I mean, you can frame it how you want. We mean like it's a thing you think is bad in the scene. So maybe you think the take of people have in the scene is bad based on this.
Yeah, that's the word. Yeah. So what I think is bad in the scene is that we saw like how basically Spirit is just so compromised when they don't have a donk performance. And I think that is bad for the scene, because when you have a team that is that reliant on a singular player, as we've seen in the past, that leads to like erratic results, which means we no longer have this dynamic. We're not going to be talking about Spirit if they show up at the event. We're going to be talking about donk shows up, right? It went like, and they have other star players. You have Shiro, right? You have a top 5 opera for most people, like sure, if they made a list of it, right? But you're not going to be talking about that because of what they just did at the last event. You're going to be talking about how one of the powerhouse teams, you're just going to be referring to, does donk show up or not? And that's what it is going to become the narrative, in my opinion. And I think that's bad for Counter-Strike, like in general, that their team is entirely reliant on one individual player's performance. Now, I also respect his ability and what he's doing. I'm not putting the blame all on him, but I'm saying they have created this entire situation where they don't have a plan B, it seems. You want to give Chopper credit for his ability to call, and I do as well. But the reality is, as soon as donk doesn't find his entries, one of the best teams in the world looks completely lost, and that is not fun Counter-Strike to watch, and that's bad for Counter-Strike.
I mean, I've shifted how I've felt a lot about Spirit with the calling and everything like that because of actually even watching their games a little bit closer after the fact, such as what's happening at the Bet Boom event that's going on right now. If donk is just kind of smurfing on everybody at this event, and in the rounds where he just dies, they just lose. Like, they just lose so many more rounds. If he doesn't actually get a double entry, they just do lose a lot more. And it's kind of an eye-opening experience where it's like, oh, okay, they still won the game 13-4. Well, what happened on those 4 rounds they lost? Oh, donk just didn't get the opener, and then they just couldn't actually pick up the pieces beyond that. And the thing is that I rate Shiro quite highly. I rate him as a top 4 opper in the world right now, and I even would probably go as far to say he's a top 5 or 6 player. I haven't remade my top list entirely, but I think he's around there right now. But when I see if donk just doesn't do 160 damage at the beginning of the round, then Spirit's chances are just so much lower. The losses that they had to G2, or the loss they had to G2 at Cologne was just so damning that, oh, okay, you had your star player fall off. And I feel like there's this thing, I'm trying to think of like what the argument always was, but people would kind of, it's like you're gonna try not to put the cart before the horse kind of argument with the whole like star player and IGL, because it works as a tandem. Like they both need to be performing to some level of success. But the thing is that the thing that's so important is that when you have a star that's performing well, no amount of calling is going to ever undo a star player that's just putting up a 0.8 rating. And so I don't want to put all the blame on Chopper either, but I get your point entirely. And I do agree with it, that I do feel like so much of Spirit's success is predicated on donk's own individual form. And I would even go to say the hot take right now that I have about Spirit is that I'll just say this, like, if we're looking at the upcoming major and who's likely to win it right now, I feel like Spirit's probably in the mix of the top 3, top 4. But I'm just going to say right now, my call is Chopper will never have an era. Chopper will never have an era. He's not the kind of in-game leader that actually puts together like actually sustainably good calling for long stretches of time. He has peaks as a caller. He has sometimes he'll put a couple good like games together in a row or whatever. He'll even do well enough to get deep into a tournament. sometimes even win it. But I will just say, like, tournament to tournament, nowadays, when I'm watching Spirit, even with all the time that they take, by the way, they take events off, and they sometimes go to another event, and they still don't even look that good. It's almost just like randomly he'll pick in the calendar a couple events, and practically speaking, at this point, I just have to say, it's practically the major cycle. Like, this guy just seems to care about the major cycle as an IGL for whatever reason, and I don't know if he even cares about other tournaments that much. Like, they don't play ESL Pro League, they didn't go to Chengdu, they're not going, are they going to this ESL? They're skipping another event this season. I know that too.
They're in this Pro League. Maybe it's out Rio, maybe. Are they skipping Rio, maybe?
Okay, they're skipping Rio. That's right. They're skipping Rio. And I just feel like, for whatever reason, Chopper's just made it his life mission to do well at majors. And it's like, bro, you aren't Kerrigan. You're not Glaive. You're not Apex. Like, you need to perform at other events too, you know? And I think I rated Spirit too highly in the past because I was like, oh, they're the team to look out for because they did really well at this major. And then I would watch them, and this keeps happening. This has happened to me multiple times with Spirit, where I get really sold on some big tournament performance. Katowice is the lone exception in Spirit's or Chopper's entire career where he did well at an event that wasn't a major. But think of even like Vegas Squadron days, the early Spirit days with Dexter, then Wonderful. It's like they'd always have these pop-offs at major, but they were so forgettable at every other event. And I just don't think he has it in him to be a consistently good in-game leader for 300 days a year. It's just like, it's more of like a 50 days a year. He'll try really hard, and that's it for me.
Oh, yeah, go on, Flom.
No, I was just going to say, just a very short point. I feel like Chopper just calls really well with the lead. He just knows how to press. Like when he has, and especially with the type of player with Donk, I imagine Donk, he's feeding Donk, right? Like Donk's like, I'm feeling it. He's getting activated. He's good to go. You catch the lead, you catch the momentum. And Chopper really knows how to like make the most of those rounds, which, sounds easy when you hear about it, but it is hard to like stay ahead, especially at that level. You are kind of like predicting the next move. So he doesn't really, where he falters is what I think is bad for Spirit and just in general the scene, where as soon as Donk doesn't get those entries, it just looks so flat. And Shiro, unfortunately for them, is not the type of opera to go and pull that round back. If you had a Monacy, maybe, obviously a simple Torji will take like some risks like that. Like you need somebody that is also going to be a risk taker. Zontix is just too passive in those situations. Magis wants to be the guy to also take space for them but there's really no powerful follow-up. So it all just falls flat as soon as the games get a little tight, and that's where it gets really underwhelming for Chopper. But he does call incredibly well with the lead, and it is impressive when he stays ahead. I don't want to totally just shit on him and make him like, he is a good IGL, but he needs the right circumstances. And I also agree with you. I do think he puts an extra emphasis on majors, but he has such a talented team right now. It's genuinely a disservice not to have them just like locked in for more events and trying to play a little bit more. You want to manage expectations and not burn your players out, but let's be honest, dude. Donk does not need the break. Like, I don't want to speak for it, but like, you can't tell me Donk is like, yeah, dude, I want to stay home right. No, that kid wants to be at every event and he wants to be running it down at everyone. So I agree with that take. Where like, it's kind of shitty that we just see Spirit kind of dodging some events a little bit right now, because one, I don't think they really need to. Maybe that's just me projecting what I want to see. But, secondly, it definitely hasn't benefited them. So even if you wanted to sit there and say, it's good for them, good for Counter-Strike that they refresh and come back with something new. No, we just wait to see what Donk's going to do again, and he's back in the server, and then that's it.
I'll start with the Chopper angle, because if you notice, even when Spirit was on top, I actually was almost never mentioned Chopper's name, because I've always thought people are just doing the whole Madger, Muteris thing where they go, oh, is he an IGL that's been around ages and now he's getting a little bit of success? Yeah, you deserve it. This is a fucking WB movie about a plucky gym teacher who became the fucking football squad's coach because he also wanted to help the mother of that star player who the dad's in prison. Give me a fucking break. It's fucking sports, you morons. Like, none of that's real. And then also, when everyone's going, I've always rated Chopper. The Vega Squadron guy. You do know the two most fraudulent people probably in all of CSGO were May in Vega Squadron, who just pressed W and didn't even have a brain. Like, it could have been algae between his ears, mate. He just pressed W and shot people with a crosshair. And then Chopper, who was the one behind, going, "Fly, my pretties, fly." And that was his entire playbook. Just rush, flying Vs and shit with CZs.
Inferno Vega Squadron B hit is
it was garbage.
You respect the B hit, damn it.
It was garbage.
He also was only the in-game leader of that Vega squadron for like a few weeks, by the way. He wasn't even always, I guess he was the secondary caller, but like Luis Mira did an interview with him where he was like, yeah, I only tried it for a few weeks. And it was, I actually forgot who the in-game leader was.
No one knows. No one can even remember. No one can even name all 5 members of said legendary. We just abused every word in the English language. Legendary Vega squadron. Fucking hell, bro.
Yeah. I love that. Oh yeah, no, I mean, God, just for Reddit petty grievances, I guess it's just when people were talking about Chopper and they're like, oh, real ones remember when Chopper was the in-game leader of Vega. It's like, but he wasn't.
Give me a break.
But he actually was only doing that for a week or a few weeks, and it wasn't actually that major that you watched either. So.
But anyway, the problem is, I sort of agree with Flom's point as well. I don't know if I'd just say it's with a lead. I would say this: if you look at their team, one of the biggest things that's emerged about Spirit to me is, even though I actually think Halley sometimes does a bad job, I think he's fucked up 2 or 3 vetoes alone this year that are inexplicable. Like, bro, if you just do like the safe veto, you probably just win this series. Like, what are we even doing playing this Vertigo against FaZe? What are we doing playing this Anubis against Monk? You know, what are we doing here? Like, what is this? But with that said, in terms of the prep, they do seem like a team where if they're heavily prepped, they are really good. They look like the team where if the playbook works, I'd say basically my problem, Flom, is I think he's a plan A fucking IGL. When the plan A is brilliant, well, the whole point is the reason why Carrigan's my favourite IGL, he has like a plan fucking T. You know what I mean? Like, he can just make up a plan. He makes up his own. He makes up like Elon Musk makes up children's names. Yeah, exactly. He can just do what he wants. So at that point, those people are godlike, I think, the ones who can sort of on the fly come up with something. That's not everyone. In fact, it's not most IGLs. You shouldn't even expect that. Here's the real problem I think you have in this team. But it's a way of coming back to the original point. It's that you've got Donk. Because here's what's funny. If you think about this, think about last year when there was all that hype about Donk, right, and his rating, and he's going to be on the scene soon. Get ready. He's turning 17. He's going to be so fucking sick, right? At the time, remember what every thread was on HLTV. It's like, which team will Donk go to? Who will he leave and join? Will he join Virtus Pro? Will he join Na'Vi? No one ever thought he'll be in Spirit, right? Because the logic at the time was like, but Spirit isn't a top team. So at the time, if you remember, the 2 prospects wasn't Zontix. It was fucking Donk and Art Frost was the AWPer, if you remember. And those 2 people, everyone said, these guys should just be in better teams, basically. But what happened was, that changed everything, was the Shiro move. Because since Shiro chose to leave Cloud9, remember, if he stays in Cloud9, Cloud9's probably still trying to cycle a 5th player to make an actual, like, best team in the world. That you had that potential. You had Axel, you had Electronic, you had Perfecto. That looked mega on paper. As soon as Shiro left, that was the actual balance of power shift. Because now, you not only had Donk, right? Imagine the world, guys, where the same team, but with Art Frost instead of Shiro players, right? We're not criticising anyone now. All we're doing now is going, holy fuck, this Donk guy's amazing. He's probably like top 5 player, but he plays for like the 11th best team in the world. Then we go, remember, there'd be no Shiro. We'd go, this Art Frost guy's an up-and-comer. Yeah, sure, he's not on a Shiro level or a Monacy or a Ziwu, but he's on the rise. You know, maybe if they do well at the next event, they can make a semi-final. Then we'd go, oh, Chopper's actually not calling a bad game. They have like 3 or 4 maps they're good on. Zontix, he's going to be one of the better rookies to come along. Who was this guy? Doesn't even have sick aim, but he wins all these clutches. Instead, because we've put Donk instantly, and he should be there at the Ziwu status, and you've got Shiro, which I agree with you, when they both frag is enough to look like the best team, it means the pressure on everyone is insane now. Like, essentially, what we're already doing is, 1, we're treating Donk like he is Ziwu. Every time he fails, like, he's fucking washed. And then also, every time Donk doesn't do it awesome like Ziwu, we just shit on every teammate like they're all bombs too. Because I think that one's mad. Like, I agree on the Shiro point. The real problem is this team in CS2, it is a lot about fragging. The game is just a lot about AKs shooting people in heads. That's why the AWPer's life got harder. So if you go and look at the teams that consistently overwhelm people, they're the teams that have mad firepower. They are fucking Vitality. They are Mouse. By the way, I think Mouse, it's the reason why Mouse has dusted this team off. Because when Mouse is rolling, they can have 3 stars. You usually have 2. And by the way, that's the dangerous thing about Zontix. His game isn't even crazy fragging. It's more like impact rounds and winning clutch. So actually, fragging-wise, they can actually sometimes suffer. But the problem is they have the ultimate get-out-of-jail-free card. This is also, by the way, quickly, is why I don't rate Chopper. Bro, if your whole shit is, right, when I prep and the coach studies and we get the map that we planned for and we do the game plan and then we set up donk and then we flash him and I rush in first and then he trades and gets it. That's not a tactic. Because you could do all of that with any other rifle. You could even have Ziwu, by the way, and you wouldn't get those rounds. You get those rounds because you have probably the most broken offensive play in the history of Counter-Strike, any version. Like, I don't think people even realise, bro, donk actually entries sometimes. When we used to say before, Forrest is like an entry, we meant in the entry pack. He actually plays what people now like to call the playmaker role. You just play behind the hard entry and you just clean up the site. That's why you get all the kills. It's actually the best fragging role in the game to have, basically. That's why Nico was at his best when he does it. Shock's doing it like that when he's coming out the middle of the pack and then you choose when to go in. Donk actually does both. He either play makes off someone else like a chopper or someone running in, or he just brute forces, bro. The maps that you want to see is on a maps like Anubis. He just goes in on his own with like 2 CTs watching him, and the amount of times I have seen him kill the first guy clean like that, and either kill the second, which is already impossible. It's why if you go and look, the most broken thing about donk is, bro, he has like 3 or 4 lands where he averages over a kill a round as an aggressive rifle. Like, that isn't even possible. I said this on a past episode. Anyone who goes, well, now that Ziwu's got the same rating, he's better. No, that means Ziwu's worse, you dumb fuck. You don't understand how stats work. Like, here's the thing. Ziwu couldn't do that. He couldn't. No one could do that. But I actually think no one could do what donk does. So I do think it's going to over-evaluate every aspect of the team, because it's going to look like you have tactics that aren't tactics. Like, they don't work for anyone else, or they're not as effective. So I do think that's sort of true. Now, look, the upside is you do have maybe the best player to ever play Counter-Strike. That could still win you a lot of tournaments, man. That can win you a major. I can get you out of all kinds of trouble. Just ask Huxley. So what I would just say is that I agree. The main problem is just that thing that, like, I do think for fragging, it has to be those two. That's just a precondition, by the way. Those two must turn up. Zonk and Shiro must be really good. Now, they can do that, but if one part of that circuit breaks, you are going to actually just lose a lot of semi-finals. You're going to not win titles. Because if you think about it, right, dude, even the Na'Vi Globe, where suddenly they're in every final, is because they're getting Wonderful's pretty good, Bit Smurfs, and then JLS Crazy Tour. Like, they have 3 people too. Not all the time, which is why they probably won't have an era. So I agree with all the points, actually. I think it's well phrased. I think, actually, even though I still rank them as a mega team, I think essentially people like overrated them because of Katowice, and they have to get out their brain that wasn't even the upper limit, and probably no one can ever do that again. Remember, they lost 1 map barely at the whole tournament. Like, that was an outlier for even them.
Mm-hmm. Never seen anybody perform like that with the rifle, except for maybe Nico leading into the major that nobody remembers because he missed a shot on simple top hut. I don't think we've ever seen anybody this good with the rifle. That was maybe like Nico, and that was maybe the closest I've ever seen.
He was insane
for any special, because Nico did the same thing. He wasn't in the second roll. He was pure entry, ran outside, yard on nuke, killed 2 people, and you just won a round. You know, it didn't matter that you had fucking Almanac playing. Like, what the like, you were just bro. You had Nico, and the same thing with donk, right? You're absolutely right. You know, we basically put him on a pedestal, but that's because he's so fucking good.
No, by the way, dude, think about that. That even would have gone the other way. Bear in mind, there's obviously a world where, like, again, say like Na'Vi woke up and they had a bad sleep or something and G2 won that major. Bro, Nico would have been goated. He would have won a major with Nexa as the IGL and Amanek and Jax on his team. Like, mate, just give him the fucking GOAT title already. Maybe he is the best ever. Like, that's insane, bro. Yeah, that would have been nuts.
His rifling was disgusting. But yeah, I just wanted to give donk more credit, because people just cannot comprehend his, like, when people like, oh, you guys are just like hyping up donk too much. People just
you can't overhype this player. It's impossible. Even what you said, put it this way, I even think a really unfair thing is he can't do actually what Ziwu can do. Dude, I've seen Ziwu. He did it against FaZe at this major. He did the first 2 maps of the final. He can play okay and still win. Donk has to. Here's the key difference. I'll phrase it very carefully. In every single big Spirit loss, Donk didn't perform, but there's loads of times Donk did perform and Spirit still lost. Do you see the distinction there? By the way, it's actually the other way around to all those dickhead Ziwu fans who keep going, right, we can remove Donk from the convo now. It's just Monacy and Ziwu. You'd only see that. You'd only say that if you're a Ziwu fan, bro, because Donk has actually for real had something mental. Like, I'm going to say like 4 bad series the whole year. Like, what do you want, bro? He's not actually like God. Like, he has to have some bad games.
Yeah, I think what hurts Donk though is exactly what Maui referenced earlier though. Like honestly, I kind of have fallen into that trap a little bit. I'll absolutely admit, like not because I'm a ZywOo fanboy, but because we just don't see him as much.
That's
like
true.
It feels like
Yeah.
we're it's hard not to like fall into that recency bias trap because it's not like they went to an event, you know, it's like they skipped an event, showed up and looked like absolute trash. So then you can't then you have to basically, you know, I'm not really, I personally am not following the Bet Boom tournament, so I can't really have
Fair
much
enough.
of a like. But I'm waiting to see how they look in Pro League, and that's kind of where I'm going to be like, all right, let's evaluate Donk and see what he's up to. So I think to defend people a little bit, I don't think it's only ZywOo fanboys, only because myself, I have to admit, I fall into that trap. But that's because of their own choice with Spirit skipping an event, and then when they decide to show up, they look like crap. Like I don't know. It's like, yeah, we're actually gonna be ready for Cologne in the major, and then you show up to Cologne and you get absolutely just washed out of the tournament. It's hard not to like, yeah, just basically I said I'm repeating myself, but fall into that trap of like maybe he's not into that, you know, maybe it is just Modesty and ZywOo, but that's Spirit's choice. They kind of did that to him themselves.
The best thing that Spirit could be doing is, honestly, I hate to say this, but it's just ruining so many of the stat cells arguments. It's just that them playing these Bet Boom events, which most people don't care about, just so when people go on HLTV as they do, and they're like, who are the top players this year? And they click top players, and then you change it to top 20 or to 2024 top 20 filter, and you see now Donk is like 0.04 higher than ZywOo, whereas before Bet Boom started, he was like pretty much tied with him. But Donk is just smurfing so hard that the people that are like, well, actually, if you put up the stats, actually, it's gonna they're pretty much equal throughout the entire year. It's like, no, like the reason that Donk's lack of sample size has hurt him so much. If he got to play an ESL Pro League all the way through, I can't wait to see him just end that whole tournament with a 1.5 rating, because all of those teams in the group stage, which ZywOo got to smurf on similarly, Donk is going to get to smurf on as well. And so that's going to give him so much, like that's going to give him such a big lead, assuming he plays as well as he normally does at it. And I feel
By the way, that is the best argument. If you actually want to make an argument against Donk, you just say his sample size is smaller than, like, especially ZywOo, but Modesty as well. That the problem is they take that to mean he's just worse. It's like, I've never seen these games you're telling me are bad. Like, again, I'm not going to do like the fucking Austin CS, but if I pulled up the demo of the game you're telling me Donk sucks in, I think he might have had 2 series he was actually bad in. Other than that, the bad ones he's having as pure entry rifler are like, you know, he got +2, like. Mate, if that's the worst case scenario, he is the best player to ever play CS. You know what I mean? And also, that's also the last reason on the Donk one. I do look down on people who think that, like, they want to, in the stock market of opinions, Flom, they're going to short Donk. It's like, bro, this is why I actually got to look goated with all those comments in 2016 about Simple. Because I can't believe you guys watch with the eye test and go, nah, this guy's overrated. It's like, what are you talking about? By the way, we could have done like a 20 more minute Glaze session about him saying these T-sides are like, they're impossible. They don't even make sense. Bro, even his CT rifles don't make sense. When he uses the M4A1S, like his spray looks like there is zero fucking actual like spray pattern. Like it just goes straight all to the head instantly. Like it's why one of the craziest things about him as well is like, mate, his actual like close range spray is actually like an aimbot. It's actually insane. Like, it just goes straight to the head and it doesn't miss. Like, you can basically only kill this guy close range if you just catch him, like, off angle, basically. Like, you'll never win a duel against him. It's mental. Like, the problem is, because we've got so many really good players, like, the sad thing is, when I say Donk's up here, now it's going to sound like I don't think Exertion is good. I think if Donk didn't exist, we'd all be talking about Exertion as, like, the best fucking rifler in the world or something like that. But the point is that there's even gradations between them. And by the way, this isn't just, like, a player said this. Don't worry. I can tell you privately, even Exertion knows I'm not Donk. You know what I mean? It's like the ROPS thing. It's like, oh no, I'm the best in most servers, but not if like Donk or ZywOo enter the server. Like I just know that they're better than me. Like I don't think fans realise we're not doing what they think we're doing. But they think we're just picking the next hot player and we're just riding it like, oh, it's the best, like the media does in sports, right? We're actually for real telling you in 10 years, this will be the player that you'll be going, who was the greatest Counter-Strike player ever? Was it Neo, Forest, Simple, ZywOo, you know, and this guy's name will be one of the ones that people will be arguing. Like, it's actually almost a lock. I know nothing is a lock, but in the same ways I get why ZywOo fans think he's going to win Player of the Year for like 5 years. He has an extremely good chance. So does this guy, mate. This guy could win Player of the Year like every year out from now on. To me, that was just all about
exactly.
Spirit, actually. But whatever, it turned into a dog. It's all good.
Fuck
He even carried this section. Never mind the fucking Spirit themselves. They just front ran early on. I agree. By the way, to see more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content, well, subscribe to this channel then, or, you know, be a pleb and don't.